Session 474. Rob noted, Jane and I had long discussion before the session. Seth said, "All right, now, you are both afraid of making a move, but it is much easier for Ruber to adopt the physical symptoms of immobility because of his own background. I told you in our last session that one member of a family could accept the symptoms for the whole family. Some of these are, of course, his own. In your particular circumstances, because of Ruber's background, you see the physical manifestation of both of your fears, an incapability of motion. Now, in your discussion, you released some emotions, and this is beneficial, but you have not discussed such problems together in some time. You feared upsetting Ruber, and Ruber would immediately insert desperately positive statements out of a panic to find that you were so disturbed, and this would anger you. An inability to face or admit or solve physical problems can also be reflected in the physical condition and reactivate earlier sensitiveness, leading to a sense of helplessness. Then you come to an impasse where there is no motion of a positive nature, either in the physical realm or the mental or spiritual one. The very attempt to solve the physical problems brings out inner abilities. The very attempt to solve the physical problems often solve the inner problems that are being projected upon the physical reality. You cannot stay within a physical condition you consider helpless and not change it, and expect any kind of creativity or help. You must either accept the situation wholeheartedly or reject it. When you can no longer accept it, then you must change it. Otherwise, the feeling of helplessness builds up. Ruber has been afraid, because of his background, to accept the negative aspects of your exterior circumstances. He loves you so deeply that he never wants to admit that you are hurt, bitter, or sad. He has always thought that you were used, mainly by your mother, but he was afraid that his statements would be misinterpreted because of his own relationship with his parents. He feels you are being bled, money-wise. Now, your physical situation is not entirely unbearable. Think what you have in comparison to what many human beings on your planet have, and you are kings. Remember that. Rob said, "I do think of that." Seth said, "However, Ruber has also picked up your feeling of hopelessness. Both of you have refused to come to grips with it and have been afraid of making any physical moves or upsetting the apple cart. Ruber is only too aware of the fact that he pushed to leave Sarah, and that your circumstances afterward in Florida were negative. He felt you blamed him for this, and thought it was an undisciplined action on his part, forcing you to make changes you did not want to make. You would not have left your parents so far behind at that time, he felt, except on his behalf. He felt also that you chastised him and held it against him bitterly. He has therefore never pushed you really to make a change since that time, and has pushed such ideas away from him. Although he feels the longer you stay at artistic, the more unhappy you will be. And there is also in him, and in you, a fear of making a move in physical terms. You are afraid of the consequences. When you are afraid to move, you are creatively constrict. Ruber is acting out your situation as a family and as a unit. You did this at one time. That terrified him more than the present situation. All of the material given concerning Ruber's background and motives is highly legitimate. But it shows clearly why he was willing to take on this role. He thought it would free you. In late months, he has seen that it has not. He would do literally anything to see you relieved and happy, and working productively. He thought, or felt, that by taking on the symptoms of your joint problem, he could free you creatively, and was bewildered when it did not. You were willing to let this continue, feeling that it was temporary, and that you had done it for him before. You have a deep distrust of moving, because of your parents' stationary background, and because of your father's distrust and fear of the outside world. When you do move, you have a tendency to feel that Ruber should pay for the inconvenience. Here you associate him with your mother, and Ruber feels this unfair. Except for our sessions, there has been little freshness in your environments, because you would find it, both of you now, frightening. In other words, you have preferred to place the problem, both of you again, upon Ruber in physical terms, rather than face the inner issues with initiative and daring. You, Joseph, have been afraid of daring in that respect, and so have closed your mind to solutions that are possible. Ruber's own affiliation and identification with a place has allowed him to burrow in here and thus go hand in hand with your fear, your own fear, of initiative movement. You do to some extent identify with your mother, in terms of a husband rather than a son. Now that the king father has been removed, Ruber feels that the mother acts as a center from which you will not move, but feels guilty of this feeling. To some extent out of misguided loyalty, all of the men in your mother's life have kept her from using her own strength. Her happiness is not dependent upon your activities, however. She has far more vitality than any of you give her credit for. She will make out, in Ruber's terms, no matter what you do or your brothers do. You have used this as an excuse. Now, you both thought that Ruber's symptoms were a solution. You thought they bought you time. This has been a cooperative effort. You felt your physical problems insurmountable, that you had not the energy to face them. Ruber's symptoms you thought gave you both time. You had moved so often in the past you were afraid of making a false move, and so you chose to make no move at all. You became afraid of challenge. Ruber was terrified because his early efforts seemed to have left you nowhere. You seemed to have no initiative to make a physical move on your own, and he was afraid of making another false suggestion. You simply became afraid to act in physical universe. For a while, you adopted the symptoms of immobility, then Ruber accepted them. The thought of the sad cell revived you. Then the old ideas of helplessness settled back in, particularly when Ruber discovered the taxes. You have both been resentful against your landlord, and particularly against Lino York, and he had something to do with Ruber's latest symptoms. Your attitudes are entirely wrong, and causing much of the difficulty. Properly applied, The book Rupert's student brought from New York could be invaluable to you, and I mean invaluable. It does not mean that it would relieve you of personal responsibility, however. Now, take your break. You have also picked up your father's business. Some of your ideas are legitimate interpretations of the facts, but others are exaggerations. You must make an effort to face these other problems head-on. Rob noted. Seth returned almost at once after I said that I wasn't interested in solving our problems by simply changing jobs for more money. The problem was that I wanted time to paint and time for Jane to write. Seth said, I am not speaking of the physical challenges of other jobs. You misinterpret me. I am telling you that when your entire physical circumstances appear hopeless to you, then you must change them, or honestly admit that these are the circumstances within which you must work, and not fool yourself. And when you do not feel that the physical circumstances are worthwhile, that you are not getting enough out of them, that the disadvantages outweigh the advantages, then you must change them. Here again, attitude is all important. Now, one note. You both felt that since you were the one who had the part-time job, Rupert would accept the physical symptoms of your predicament, and you felt this was just. You did because you felt that you were facing physical reality to that extent, and he was not, and he did for the same reason. We are speaking of inner values, not inner self-values, but subconscious values. One note. You would both do better near water. Rob noted. This was the end of the session, although James started out to merely take a break.